Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to the METUS Tech Show. Today we're going to be speaking with Chris Morin from HVAC Pro Blog. But first, the METUS Minute. Today's METUS Minute is about rated capacity versus maximum capacity. Rated capacity is the system output capacity observed at standard AHRI rated testing conditions of 47 degrees and 17 degrees Fahrenheit, outdoor temperatures for heating. HRI testing performed to standard HRI 210-240 requires the compressors to be run at a constant speed of 60 Hz due to the testing limitations. Any advantages gained by variable speed equipment is not exhibited in the test results. The test results values are listed in the AHRI Directory of Certified Product Performance, which is accessible through the HRI website. These values are also listed and identified in all METUS published resources, including brochures, technical documentation, and the website. Maximum capacity is the actual output capacity units will produce when trying to achieve set point conditions, or the set point from the relative load conditions, the room temperature. The greater the load requirement, the more the capacity increases until maximum capacity of the unit is reached. Maximum capacity was equal to rated capacity before the introduction of inverter drive variable speed compressors. Maximum capacities are also listed and identified in all METUS published resources. For example, an MSZ FH12NA 12,000 BTU heat pump has a rated capacity at 47 degrees of 13,600 BTUs, a rated heating capacity at 17 degrees of 8,000 BTUs, and the maximum heating capacity at 17 degrees Fahrenheit is 13,600 BTUs. Thanks for listening, and now on with the show.
The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The METUS Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
Hey Chris, so you were telling us about this golf story?
Oh my gosh. Do you guys play golf?
I used to.
You got out there?
Yeah. I'm a fan. I used to play, but
very little.
Yeah, I had to quit for medical reasons.
So I'm a top golf professional.
Yeah, there you go. So I started early on because my mom wouldn't let me play football. She said I could get hurt, right? So she thought you can't get hurt playing golf, right? So I started out playing high school, and I didn't play much when I was in the military and when my daughter was born. But I finally got a chance now, working for myself and create my own schedule. And my daughter's now 15, right? So I'm able to get out a little bit more. So I was in this veterans golf tournament a few weeks ago. It was probably 3 weeks ago now. And it was in Newport. Unbelievable course. Okay. I was just happy to be there, but it was like 30-mile-an-hour winds. Every shot was a guess. And I was trying to convince myself I'm having a great time. Right. So I hit this awesome drive on the 16th hole, and I'm in the middle of the fairway. I just wedge in. If those that are golfers know what I'm talking about here. And I didn't eat lunch. So I was a little dizzy. Maybe I'm getting older. Can't handle the 18 holes, even if I'm in a cart anymore. And on my downswing, I lost track of where I was. Maybe I closed my eyes. I'm not sure, but I hit the ground before the ball. And it's terribly embarrassing for any golfer, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like a 9 handicap. I'm not that bad. All right. No lie, dislocated my ring finger on my right hand on the 16th hole.
Wow.
I didn't know what happened. And
ouch.
I thought I hurt my wrist, right? So I went down and grabbed my hand, and I could feel my ring finger flapping back.
Oh,
right?
Ooh.
So I had to pop it back in. And I'm with a bunch of veterans that were in Vietnam and stuff like that, right?
Suck it
So
up.
I pop it back in, and they're like, "You okay?" I was like, yeah, I might have sprained it. I don't know. I'm trying not to lead on that it hurts or anything, So I'm like, I try to finish the last 2 holes, right, with the equivalent of a sprained finger now because it's not dislocated anymore. And, it was like double bogey, triple bogey, hour and a half drive home, just hurting, right? And I didn't swing a club for a couple of weeks, but yeah,
that sounds gross.
Little did my
Painful.
mom know.
Yeah.
Little did my mom know you can hurt yourself.
You can
golf
hurt
too.
yourself, but it's the mental damage that golf does to you that is, that's why I had to quit, because of mental health. But
Yeah.
You remind me of those guys, those tough guys, right? They'll slice their finger open and use PVC cement to
There you go.
instead of a Band-Aid.
That's what the electrical tape's really for on those bands, Paul.
Exactly. And you've also tried a new pizza recently.
Yeah.
We gotta
So
talk about food.
I'm in Massachusetts. I'm not too far from where you live, Paul, right? And we have a place in Milford, Mass. It's called Pepperoncini's, right? Awesome bread and stuff. So I tried the pizza there. And my daughter's 15, so she's getting a little bit more, curious on food and things like that compared to when it used to be bland for 10 years, you know? So she wants to try buffalo chicken pizza, which I'd never had. I said, that's a great idea. So we get the pizza last night, and I swear that's like, it's not even eating pizza. It's like a sub. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really good.
Right? And of course, it depends on how good the buffalo chicken is, but they put like carrots and celery on the pizza, which I thought like I'm going to be taking this off, but it tastes like you're eating a buffalo, I don't know, maybe buffalo chicken appetizer, you know, it's all in one bite with the cheese. It was unbelievable.
Was the chicken grilled or was it breaded?
It was breaded, but they sliced it up into really small chunks. So you could tell they probably fried it. Extremely horrible for you. You know, I shouldn't be eating that sort of thing.
We don't care about that type of thing.
Man, it tasted good. I had 4 pieces. Couldn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
So
half a pizza.
Yeah, I think around my area, it's really popular. Like every pizza place has it now. Barbecue chicken pizza as well. My kids go nuts for
I'm
that.
not crazy about that one.
With the barbecue sauce as the sauce, it's
I'm not crazy about that one. I like the buffalo chicken one, but the barbecue chicken, I don't.
Yeah,
like.
Paul's more of a pineapple pizza guy.
No way.
I think you're Hawaiian, Paul.
Yeah. You know, I'm always saying what a small world HVAC is. So at one point years ago, Chris and I lived in the same town, and our kids actually were in kindergarten. I think it's either kindergarten or preschool together, and then and Chris moved away. But that's how small HVAC, and that was before either one of us worked for Mitsubishi.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I you think back. Obviously, I'm not with Mitsubishi anymore, right? After almost 10 years there, but you think back, like a lot of the people that I worked with when I was there were people that I knew when any of us worked there.
Yeah.
So
and you and I have also run into each other on job sites when we were both in a van. I remember that. And then when you were working with Charlie and that group there, HVAC is a small world. Anyway, Chris, thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate it.
And we want to talk about your book. So before we get into that, because you mentioned you used to work for Mitsubishi, you've been on the show at least once or twice before, but just to remind folks, tell us what you did for Mitsubishi and what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. Right when I left this past September, I was the business development sales manager for the residential team in the Northeast, but I was a regional sales manager and an area sales manager prior to that. I focused mostly in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, but I helped our team grow. I was able to hire a few people. I really focused on a lot of, let's say, putting systems in place, creating training. There was a huge focus in the Northeast when the rebate programs really kicked off around integrated controls and system design. So I kind of became the go-to person for a lot of our distributors for that, which really led me into my new role in the HVAC industry now, Yeah,
and you have your own company. You're working for yourself, and the business is HVAC Pro Blog. Right?
Yeah, HVAC Pro Blog. So it's actually, I was doing this nights and weekends when I was working at Mitsubishi. Yep. I was doing written blogs, right? It just gave me an outlet because I was really focused on Mitsubishi equipment when I was working there, right? So I had all the past experience as a service tech and service manager, and talking to multiple people. I had a way of creating videos and creating content and being able to give back and help people learn, right? That's kind of like what my passion was. And an interesting thing happened. As you know, Paul, you can get really, when you work for a bigger corporation, you can really travel a lot and get in this trap of being on the road. And my daughter's 15 now, and I was looking for ways to not be on the road very much. But as you continue to move up in big corporations, it just means more travel typically, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I started taking vacation days and teaching classes with some local organizations and stuff. And when I came home, my wife was like, you're a different person when you're doing this as opposed to traveling. I said, why can't you do this all the time? I said, that's impossible, right? But lo and behold, I was able to get a grant from the Mass Clean Energy Center to build my business.
Nice.
So I got to a point where I had to make a choice, and I took the leap and started working for myself last September.
Oh, good for you.
That's awesome.
And good for you. And
Thanks.
you're also a veteran. I would say a former Marine, but you know there's no such thing. Once a Marine,
That's
always
right.
a Marine. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, no worries, Paul. Thanks, man.
So, and speaking of that, you kind of have an interesting journey. So I like to say, you went from carrying an M16, right, to becoming an ACA approved instructor, ACA certified instructor, right? And this is the second book. We had you on once before, and your book was Opportunities in HVAC, which was sort of like trying to get the younger people into the industry and all the good and that comes with that. So in your book, you kind of tie in a lot of things together. So what inspired you to connect the Marine Corps, the principles and leadership with HVAC contracting?
Yeah, it's interesting. My transition from carrying tools to leading teams in the Marines and then working for Mitsubishi, right? I think it revealed a stark truth that unfortunately technical skills alone in our trade don't build great companies. We do a great job with technical training and sales training, but not necessarily leadership training or business training. And the Marine Corps taught me that leadership principles, like when they're applied properly, it's almost like a force multiplier for your company, right? So as an example, like when I was in Iraq first time around, I'd be working on heat pumps, it'd be 120 degrees, right? And what I found was it wasn't necessarily about the technical know-how. It was more about the leadership that was under pressure, right? And this directly translated to how HVAC companies are handling when we have a cold snap in New England or, it's really hot and humid in the summertime and failure isn't an option, just like when it wasn't an option in the middle of Iraq, right? And really this boils down to like high pressure situations, critical equipment, no room for excuses, right? Which is across every portion of the trade and no matter what branch of the military you're in.
Get it done.
And it really just like it was kind of surprising about how different these worlds were not, right? So these worlds, the Marine Corps and HVAC were very close when it came to the need for leadership and the principles that drive that, right? And I thought, geez, I was so fortunate because when I was 20 years old, right after September 11th, I actually was promoted to corporal and I had to go to a leadership training course. And I realized we just don't have that in HVAC, no matter how big the company is. Yeah. They don't do leadership training, right? And I thought it was an opportunity to pass on some of those leadership traits and some ideas for those companies to work on that, right? So long-winded explanation, Paul,
but that is the one thing the military does. And you're right. When you get promoted, once you become an NCO, you don't become an NCO without going in leadership training. Right. So military does a lot of things well, and that's one of them that they do.
And I remember a lot of things not so well too.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's that's because it's part of the government. It's when the government gets involved, so. Yeah.
It's funny how life works and how things come full circle. But I remember in one of your past episodes, being in the Marines, you talked about installing Mitsubishi systems.
Yeah.
Talk about that again real quick, because that was interesting.
So my second trip over to Iraq, I was we were ramping up for the Fallujah push, if you remember how the war went over there, right? So this was somewhere around 2005, 2006. And we were setting up these gigantic tents for all of the Marines to come into air base that we were at, right? And they said we were going to put heat pumps in. I was like, okay, it's like 120 consistently over there, right? And it'll be like 60 degrees at night, right? So it's perfect weather, right? So I get these Connex boxes in, and it's all standalone Mitsubishi one-to-one systems, and we didn't have vacuum pumps and gauges and all the fun stuff that you need to do it right? But I got to tell you, like when we installed these things, we did everything wrong. We purged lines. We, ran wires for what we had over to the most ridiculous sort of setup for what we would call a panel, but it was just like grounding rods with wires tied to it, right? And these things ran 7 months that I was there, like they were bulletproof in 120, 130 degrees. It was unbelievable. I don't know what happened when I left, but those things, that was my first experience with Mitsubishi. And I have a picture that I used to use in training of me sitting on one of those condensers with the corporal I was with. And I used to open it up that like I went to work for Mitsubishi. I don't know, maybe he went to work for one of the competitors, but
that is wild. I like that story because it's and then you work for Mitsubishi for 10 years. That's so wild.
And that was probably at least 8 years after that. Like, I mean, it was a good gap. It wasn't like I came home, was like, I tried to find the Mitsubishi job, right? It just kind of fell into my lap, Right. It's crazy how things work out.
Yeah, it's funny. And again, getting back to how small the things are, where I was working before Mitsubishi, I was time for a change. I remember calling you and saying, hey, any opportunities there where you were working? You said, no, but I was talking to this recruiter. He just called me and you gave him my number. He called me, and 4 months later, I'm working for Mitsubishi. So it's funny how that all ties in together.
Yeah, so you can blame me, Paul.
Yeah, thanks a lot. No
worries.
Yeah, and getting back to how you started, your own company here, you kind of reminded me. It's such a horrible thing when your wife gives you a good idea and you have to give her credit for it.
Oh yeah, you have to admit it. Yeah,
I can't stand
that.
But
it wasn't just good for her and us. I mean, it was even for myself, right? So as you can imagine, in the military, I've picked up some anxiety and some other issues, right? So travel was a problem for me mentally and stuff. It wasn't just physically, right?
No, so I hear you.
Yeah, it can be fun at first, but after a while, it starts to weigh on you, being away.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book for a second. You share a very good story, a powerful story, actually about this guy, Wayne, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Oh, it's Wayne Dvorak, yeah.
Dvorak, right? About him standing his ground against a general on guard duty. So my background in the military was I was an MP, and I think it reminded me of this because I used to tell people who outranked me, which was pretty much everybody when I was an E2 and an E3, and I used to tell them, hey, don't confuse your rank with my authority. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that really ties into one of the leadership traits, which is integrity, right? Yeah. And integrity, it's not theoretical, it's practical, okay? So when you're pressured to install equipment that's oversized, it's easier maybe just to sell that system or smaller system that's underpowered, right? Because that's what the homeowner's asking for. And really, Wayne's story kind of reminds us of doing what's right because it's the right thing to do, right? Don't cave. And if you've read through it, Paul, you know that General came up to him and he wanted access, but he didn't have the credentials because he was just coming onto the space. And Wayne had general orders. Nobody without access can't get through here. And I won't give any sort of details as to what he was protecting, right? But it was important, all right? And he stood his ground, and he was fully expecting a court-martial the next day. But lo and behold, the general actually thought afterwards he did the right thing, and he wanted to celebrate it. And I think that could easily translate to HVAC because creating a culture of integrity, it means like celebrating when your team makes that tough call, right? So when a tech loses a sale because he's honest about what that customer actually needs, right? Maybe that repair will work. I know every tech wants to fix everything, right? There are times when replacing the system makes more sense. Don't get me wrong. But maybe when they actually are honest, that should be recognized, not penalized. Because I think the first thought for that salesperson is you could have turned that over and I could have sold that system and got this big commission. When in actuality, it was just a capacitor or a contactor or control board.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with, hey, I got you going, but you got to start thinking about replacing this because you don't want to put any more money into this. And at the end of the day, you got to let the customer make that choice. You can't make it for him. Hey, look, you got to decide where your money is going to go. Do you want to keep seeking into this over year after year after year? It's time to replace it. But I like that story because it's about doing the right thing regardless of the pressure. And when a general, you know how it is, a general, I don't care if it's just 1 star, there's a lot of power. And at that point, it's political. And that general could have made life very miserable for him no matter how right he was.
So he could have ended up in the middle of Alaska the next day. Who knows, right?
So kudos to Wayne and kudos to the general too for recognizing that.
For both of them. And you know what? Here's the thing: like on the HVAC side, it's not just like telling the truth, right? For integrity, like there's also what I call non-negotiables, right? Like you need to have a standard for yourself. Like do you properly recover refrigerant, right? Or are you doing accurate load calculations?
Right.
Or is it just theater, right?
Yeah.
So I always joke, like, everybody always had the 5/16 screw that was their recovery machine back in the day.
Yeah.
It's sad, but if you want to build integrity in an organization, everybody needs to have those non-negotiables, and you need to be moving in the right direction as a team.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
Yeah. And integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. And
There you go.
And that's what it is. And you reminded me, I was in the business when there were no recovery rules, right? Hey, cut the line and that's it. And when things changed, the company I was working for was not a family business. It was the very first job I think I had. And it was basically take the hose, submerge it in a bucket of water, and
There you
release
go.
the
Create a
refrigerant.
little fog machine in the backyard.
Yeah, so no one could hear it. So it was like, anyway.
Yeah, I can relate to some of that and what you said about caving, about taking control. I was teaching class yesterday. I had a student ask me about a minimum line set length. What do I do if I need a 16-foot minimum line set length, but the customer wants the condenser here and the wall mount here, and it's a 5-foot line set? You have to take control of that. They don't know any better, and don't cave and just install it that way, because you're going to be back. You're going to be back for noise. Yeah, you got to educate the customer. So I can totally relate to that in that conversation I had yesterday in class.
Yeah,
It comes up
you're
across
going to
the
deal
board.
with you're going to deal with that headache sooner
At
or
every
later.
level.
At every level.
At every level, Paul. I know there's distributors that are probably listening too. I'm sure there's situations where it's easy to cave to the contractor that's making demands. This is their account. They're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every level of our industry has this.
Yeah,
and integrity is a big
we
part.
have to do the right thing even when no one is looking, and that's important.
So, Chris, the concept of justice opens your book, focusing on fairness and consistency. You write that every decision a leader makes sets a precedent. What's your advice for HVAC owners who struggle with consistent application of policies, especially with long-term employees are involved?
Oh man, it's a tough one, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah.
So here's the thing: like, justice in our industry, it's not complicated, but it's definitely challenging, right? So my advice would be maybe start documenting your policies clearly. And I like to say that ambiguity breeds inconsistency, right? So I've seen a lot of owners make decisions based on their gut feeling or their mood rather than principles. And that is what will erode trust faster than anything else,
Sure
right?
will.
So, and really, like you mentioned, the hardest test is when your top performer breaks a rule. So I've learned this managing service teams, and you can make exceptions for your stars, but when you do, you basically just told everyone that the rules are conditional. And that destroys morale, creates resentment. Like, it's not good as a leader to have resentment on your team.
No.
So transparency is really important. And I would say explaining your reasoning, especially when it's a tough decision, is important to the team, right? And, maybe even logging those decisions, maybe having a decision log. I know it sounds crazy, but seriously, just like write down how you handled a situation. So when it comes up again, you can do the consistent thing and keep justice in your leadership, right?
And that's the important thing, is that last word that you just said, it's consistency, right? You treat that, the guy that's been with you forever, the high performer, the best tech you have, the best installer, you got to treat him the same way you would the new person, the fairness, that justice, like you said. And if you do that, you're right, you're going to breed resentment, and that's just going to be a poison in that company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I included in my book, but I almost lost a really close friendship because of that. I was a service manager, and my really close friend growing up was working for me, and I had to, treat him the same way. If he came in late or called out sick or didn't want to run the overtime call, it's tough. And really, it stressed our relationship, and I don't talk to him too much these days, unfortunately. So if he's listening, we go, man.
Yeah. So I like the next topic, because those who know me, who work with me, they seem to have this misguided illusion that I am not a very tactful person. right? And
No.
yes. The problem is I usually say what's in my head usually comes out of my mouth before the brain has had a chance to decide whether it's good to say or not.
I don't believe that.
No, it's true. Yeah, I know. It goes back to in my younger days. I told you I was a wise ass when I was younger, right?
I think we share that trait, Paul.
Yeah, but you dedicated an entire chapter to tact, and you talk about this guy, is it Matthew Clean or Klein?
Matt Clean.
Matt Clean.
Yeah.
About him guiding someone who outranks him. You know, in our industry, how do you translate that to our in industry when dealing with customers? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but the integrity part. But let's get more into that. Yeah,
I think. So the key to tact is probably not avoiding the truth, but it's delivering it effectively. And I think that's where, especially technicians, I was a technician, I was a service manager. I have no problem telling somebody the truth, but how I'm saying it and how I deliver that is what tact is. So typically when I train salespeople, I like to use what's called the bridge method. You guys heard of this?
No.
Bridge method?
No.
All right. So what you want to do is you want to acknowledge what the customer knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then bridge to additional considerations, and then guide them towards a better solution. So it's an educational way of explaining something that's wrong, right? So they know they have no air conditioning, right? Let's say it's on a service call. Maybe there's multiple options here. So you want to give them all of the additional considerations and then guide them towards one of those better solutions, as opposed to saying, hey, your AC crapped out. You need a new system. Yeah. Right. That's not delivering. Right. It's almost like it's what doctors have called bedside manner. Right.
Bedside manner. Yeah.
We don't have bedside manner in our industry. We have tact.
Yeah, and it's important, especially when you're dealing with the person who's going to be giving you a check at the end when you're done,
or not.
Yeah, or not giving you a check. Yeah. Tact is important, and it's a delicate balance too, because again, talking about the integrity. Is you got to tell the customer the truth, and you got to do what's right, and at the end of the day, and Steve kind of touched on this a little bit, the customer may say, I'm paying you, and this is what I want, and you got to be willing to walk away.
Yeah. Well, not just walk away, but also I think if you're a technical expert, sometimes at that point we make the mistake of like switching to lecture mode.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of asking questions and helping them discover some sort of limitation, so let's say you had ductwork problem, right? We could ask, what about your existing ductwork makes you think it won't work with the high efficiency system that you have now, right? And let them come to that conclusion instead of saying it's going to cost you $2,000 to replace your duct system. You can't use it.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So there's two different ways to deliver that message, right? Tact is the way is what you got to really work on. What's interesting is those that don't have tact, we all know who we are.
Yeah.
Right. Even the person that doesn't have the tact knows they don't have tact. It's hard to work on. And what I would say is if you know you don't have it, next conversation, start today.
Yeah.
Just try it.
Actually, with Steve and I, sometimes he'll actually, instead of making a decision himself, that's hard, he'll say, talk to Paul about it. Ask him. Yeah. And I just set him straight.
Especially if I need a no. If I need a no, a hard no, I'm just going to say, ask Paul. Yeah.
That's great.
So the chapter on initiative includes Mike Gambroni's story about climbing into a ceiling after hours to trace refrigeration lines when no one asked him to do this. I love Mike.
He's a great guy.
Gambo, he is the man.
Yeah, if you guys don't know Mike, I know you guys do, but if you're listening, Mike's the sales manager on the residential team for the Northeast now, and I worked for him the last 6 months or so before I left Mitsubishi, and so we had a lot of conversations, worked together for almost 10 years. And I knew him before he worked at Mitsubishi as well. So just like we were talking about, Paul.
Right. He really is a great guy. He's a Navy veteran, but we don't hold that against him.
Exactly. I still need rides everywhere.
Yeah, Marine, that's right. Exactly. So Uber for the Marines, I think, is what they call it.
He has that military mindset, and he's a go-getter. But how can HVAC business owners identify and cultivate that kind of self-motivated initiative on their teams?
Yeah, I think I think you'd start by looking for initiative in like the small things first, right? So maybe like a technician who cleans up the shop or their van without being asked, or the office manager who maybe works on the filing system, right? Because initiative, like, it's not always dramatic. A lot of times it's just a quiet improvement, right? And
Right.
this creates some space for, initiative based on outcomes, not just like processes. Hopefully this makes sense, right? So like when I managed a service team, I stopped dictating like every step of their service call and everything they had to do by a certain time, because micromanaging just doesn't work well. It's an initiative killer, right? So I think there's easy ways of giving people the room to use initiative and constantly publicly rewarding the ones that are. So it becomes part of your culture, not just you as a leader, but your company, right? And Mike's story is powerful because like nobody told him to trace those refrigerant lines on that ship, right? But his chief like immediately recognized and valued that initiative and told him. And here's the thing, that was like, I don't want to age Mike here, but let's say 30, 40 years ago, maybe somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Right. All right. And he remembered it. And that's the story he chose to tell me when I interviewed him for the book.
Yeah.
Right. So it's initiative, like being rewarded for using initiative goes both ways. It just continues a spiral. That person with that space will now take more initiative and take the initiative on bigger things. Yeah. Right.
It's good. You have to encourage, as a leader, you have to encourage that initiative, and you have to, like you said, micromanaging is the wrong way to do it. But if you give your subordinate a little bit of autonomy in certain areas, like here are the guidelines, here are our policies, here's what we do. But when they have that autonomy, they're free to use that initiative. And I remember, not to get off topic and talk about me, but I remember working for Mitsubishi, my direct boss resigned and he went to another company. And the person above him, which was one of the VPs, I was reporting directly to him. And he plain out said, he goes, "Look, I don't have time to manage you. Make what you think is the best decision. And if you screw up, I got your back."
There you go.
It gave me the freedom, you gotta, and again, the integrity ties into that as well. You do what's right. And my brother used to say, typically what's right for the customer is what's best for the business. It's tied together. So if you ask yourself, is this the best thing for the customer? Is this the best thing for the business? I got a little off topic here and I started ranting.
No, Paul, you're right. I think in that instance, you can't also just jump in as a leader when things go wrong and only point that out.
Right.
Because if you're not rewarding the initiative and publicly doing it, then everybody only sees when you're jumping in when you need to course correct. Right. So you got to do both.
Yep,
you can't just pick and choose and take the easy way out.
Yeah, it's just as important. That's a good one. That was a good chapter, and that was a good story too by Mike. And don't tell him I said that. So.
Yeah, right. Hopefully he doesn't hear this. His head will get too big. He won't be able to get through the doorway. Right?
No, I don't think he listens to us. I think he's too smart. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. He probably does. So you talk about leadership, right? But I want to relate that. Like, what if you're a service tech or an installer? You're not leading anybody, but But I think you in your book you indicate there's leadership at every level, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter what your title is, right? That's the difference between a leader and a manager. A manager has a title,
right?
And a manager doesn't mean you're a leader. So I think it's really important to have that distinction. And the way I always think about it is like a manager, like I would prefer to be called a leader in that instance, even if I was a manager, even if it was my title, because I felt like a manager was pulling. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. A manager would be pushing things, pushing people to do things, where a leader would be pulling them, helping them along, right? And it's a mindset shift between a manager and a leader. So like as an example, like for technicians, judgment and initiative, they're game changers, right? So I've seen countless situations where a tech's judgment call, right, and knowing when to push forward and when to step back could save equipment and time and customer relationships, right? And as an example, technical knowledge without decisiveness would just create paralysis, right? The tech that needs to build confidence in order to make those calls in the field based on their expertise is important. You got to have decisiveness with the technical knowledge, right? That can create a leadership situation where now everybody else on that team is looking up to them because they're making the tough call. They're fixing the system without making 75 phone calls and asking, right? And it doesn't mean rushing. Decisiveness, it's not rushing. It's making clear choices with the info you have, okay? And then, of course, we talked about tact already, right? Yeah. That's another one. You can work on that and become a leader and help other people that don't have tact on your team. And believe it or not, if you don't know me over the last 10, 12, 14 years, probably because of some of my military training and stuff, I might come across as abrasive or straight to the point. I had to work on tact for a long time, especially at a corporation, right? So the bigger the organization, the more political things can get. Oh, yeah. And, if you're trying to be a leader, what you say matters, right? And the last one I would say is bearing or professional demeanor. It sounds superficial, but it's critical, right? And I learned this early, like customers judge your technical competence by how you carry yourself way before they judge your actual work, right? So the tech that shows up looking sharp, composed, already has credibility and an advantage compared to the guy that comes out wearing jean shorts, bunch of beer cans fall out of his truck, right? With stack of dirty filters in the back. Like we've all seen it. We joke about it on Facebook. It's never my tech that has that, of course, right? Right. It's not me, but it's somebody. And I think bearing can play a role into that as well. So there's things, no matter what your title is, there's things you can work on to be a leader. And I always tell guys, work on it because there's going to be a time when someone reaches out to you to ask for help with that. And that's when you know you're a leader, when you're ready for that, right? Everybody that's worked for me always probably heard this speech. And there's guys on your team that have actually worked for me. And hopefully they can back me up here. I don't micromanage, but I certainly help them prepare for when they get that question. I want them to be ready as a leader.
Right. That's good. That's a good
point. Yeah, there's a lot of times where you're playing the role of a leader and you don't even realize it. You're playing the role of an instructor and you don't even realize it. And I tell that to students all the time. They're like, I don't know how you teach. I could never do that. And I'm like, well, do you have ride-alongs? You bring an apprentice with you in a service van? And well, yeah. I'm like, you're teaching them. You're teaching them. Yeah. You don't even realize you're doing it, and you're leading them. So
and you're doing that on the customer level as well. You got to explain to the customer and educate them on their system and what's going wrong and what needs improvement. How can they do better? How can they save money? How can they save energy? How can they be more comfortable? There's all of that.
Yeah, it's true. It runs at every level in the industry.
Yeah. So there's a story, and I think it was in the bearing chapter. And I hate to bring this up because I don't want people to think that this is condoned in the way to do things.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, but it kind of reminds me of my personal, I don't know what it was. My personal feeling is that when I had a no heat call, I have to give them heat. They have to have heat. I can't let these people freeze all night. And you got to do what you got to do to get the system running. And I've done some weird things.
Safely, though.
Safely,
right,
yes, safely. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the number one thing. But tell us about that story, and it was during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and you know where I'm going with this. Let's just say it was a problem solving.
This is an embarrassing, but yet hopefully motivational story here. And actually, I know we're not on video here, but Paul, you can see in the background one of my Navy Achievement Medals was for this crazy story. So during the invasion of Iraq, I was actually attached to the British 1st Armored Division. So we were doing security and communications and stuff for the general there. And we had a generator that went down. So, we couldn't run all of the communication equipment that we needed. And we were moving every 2-3 days. So in order to replace the generator, that would have to be a trek back through enemy lines into Kuwait to get a new generator in order to bring it forward, right? So it didn't make sense. So generator mechanic had no idea what was going on. And I said, give me that wiring diagram. So I tried to figure out why we weren't able to start this generator. And, military equipment, they're made for certain situations. They were really kind of designed for, I don't know, swamp and humid areas, but they didn't take into account desert and sandstorms. If you guys remember, there was a huge sandstorm right before the invasion of Iraq. So we had like a plastic starter switch that failed. So when you're in the middle of Iraq, you kind of rifle through everything you got. And I happened to have a paperclip. So I jumped out that starter switch in order to get the generator running. And then it just became SOP as all these starter switches started failing in Iraq. So everybody was running around with a little taped up paperclip. And lo and behold, I end up getting a Navy Achievement Medal for showing people how to use a paperclip. So what I can say here is
MacGyver.
creative problem solving, maybe.
Ingenuity.
Right?
No, that's military ingenuity. You gotta. It's mission critical at that point.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? This is great. I mentioned bearing last in the previous one. This is like I could walk in there and jokingly show them how to use a paperclip, right? Or I could say, hey, look, this is our best option. Let me show you how to do this and teach them how to start that generator up so we don't risk losing lives and stuff going back, right? So I honestly think because I was a trained leader in the Marine Corps, I handled that with some bearing, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. I like that story. And again, it's doing things safely, and I would not we're not saying that's what you should do. That you shouldn't do that on a fuse, in a 208, 230 system with your fuse. No, just don't do that.
Yeah, right. I'm sure everybody's tried or seen it. How many times you seen the pictures with the copper pipe inside disconnects?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Like I would never try that.
No,
I don't know how people do it.
I've actually seen that on a job site on a rooftop unit, and I went up to look at it, and it actually it was not good, and it was like I was scared. I was like, why? Yeah. Why would somebody do this?
It's just asking for a fire, and then you combine that with technology today, A2L refrigerants. I mean, you're asking when you start doing stuff. Now, I got to be careful. I don't want to start giving techs ideas.
No, don't
want to recommend the wrong thing here.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Chris, you conclude your book with a 5-step process for implementing leadership traits. If an HVAC contractor listening today can only focus on one step to start with, what would you recommend and why?
Yeah, I would say start with that assessment. Because you can't improve what you don't measure, right? I think that's always been consistent in my roles in the industry. I always try to measure where we are in order to improve where we are. So, use a simple scorecard rating for those 14 traits. Like you can just rate yourself 1 to 5, right? So there's 14 traits. Yeah. How good do you believe you are as a leader? 1 to 5, and then work on the ones that are 1s and 2s first, right? You don't have to go in order. This book's not a checkbox. Like you read the book, you check it off, you put it away. I'm a good leader now, right? This is something that you should be revisiting and trying to make better every 30, 60 days, right? But I'm going to be honest, sustainable leadership transformation typically takes 6 months to a year. Like if you're not a good leader today and you're leading people, you're going to have to prove it over the next year before they believe it. Right.
Yeah.
So you can't just say I'm a good leader now because I read a book. So,
and even if you are a good leader now, become a better leader. There's, you actually mentioned something like this in your book too. There's always training to be had in our industry, and it's not just technical, right? The technical training that's obvious. We always have to be. You can't stop learning. You don't graduate from HVAC school and get a job and say learning is done. It's an everyday journey. But for leadership and how to deal with people and how to grow your business and things like that, those are things you're ever learning.
Yeah, it's a cycle. It's not linear, right? You're not continually doing this. You're always learning from your mistakes and learning from decisions you've made, and it becomes a cycle. You feeds right back into the next possibility. And actually, I worked for a guy that used to give this example when everybody came in for a race. They all walk in, they all want a race, right? And he used to give this golden ring example. He would say, "You're on a merry-go-round. And I don't even know if we have merry-go-rounds anymore. And I think they're too dangerous for kids now, right? But so you're on a merry-go-round, and as you come around, there's a gold ring. And you have an opportunity to grab that gold ring. But if you miss it, you have to come all the way back around again before your chance to grab the gold ring, right? You don't get it at the next stop all the way, right? All the way around that merry-go-round. And I think that's the way you can look at leadership or advancing in our industry, right? There's always that opportunity to make that decision, grow as a leader, right? Take the assessment, buy the book, right? And it's your chance to grab the ring. And if you miss the ring, you got to wait for the next one. And who knows how long that is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in large businesses, it's once a year in order to get that promotion or that raise, right? So, and it's even less frequent when we were in the military, Paul, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it's based on time, and sometimes it's based on how long before the guy above you leaves. Yeah. There's only so many staff sergeants. There's only so many corporals, right?
Yeah.
So
I know, just a quick sidetrack here. You reminded me, for me, it was thrust upon me. Because I was in the Washington, D.C. area, and we had, like, I'm going to say 15, 20, 30 generals lived on base. And I was an E3, and my NCO, my E5, went AWOL. And we were shorthanded. They said, "You're in charge." And I was literally in the middle of the night, after hours, responsible for the security for this base. I mean,
my God.
There were people sleeping.
Your guy.
Yeah.
Right.
There were duty officers that were sleeping, and there were, higher up that were sleeping. They quickly made me an E4. Right. And the same thing, it happened at other jobs too. People quit and said, "You're in charge now." I said, "Okay." That's it.
You can look at it two ways, right? You can look at it as the wrong place at the right time, or the right place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you grab the ring.
Yeah, and and exactly, and I grabbed the ring, and it happened with other jobs when they said, and I like to think that they looked at me how I was conducting myself, and said, "Hey, he's our guy," and they had faith in me, and they wouldn't have given me that position. They would have just switched somebody around if they didn't think I couldn't do it. So it's nice that people have that vote of confidence in you. But
sounds like you work with some good leaders, Paul.
Yeah, I did. So tell us the title of the book and where can we get it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. So Leadership in HVAC, it's only available on Amazon. You can get it in paperback or of course, digital if you like I forget what they call it. Used to be a Nook, right? What do they call it these days?
Kindle?
The PDF. Yeah, Kindle. There
Kindle
we go. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Now I sound old. Right.
Yeah.
So you can get it there. Or if you're interested in anything else in the industry, certainly check out my website. There's links to the book on the website as well. So HVACProblog.com as well.
Good. And thanks for joining us, Chris. It was a pleasure. I've learned a lot. I enjoyed the book. Good topics, for every HVAC person out there, no matter who you are. So you were talking about pizza earlier, right? I saw this video. Now I have a flat top Weber slate griddle, and I can't wait to try this. I just saw this video yesterday. This guy takes the pizza dough and he spreads it out, and he puts some olive oil on the griddle and puts the dough there, flips the dough over, and then puts some sauce on it. On the other side of the griddle, he just puts pepperoni down right on the griddle, and then a bunch of cheese, spreads it out right on there, and then he just takes the dough and flips it on top of it, upside down. It's an upside down pizza. It's like fried pizza. It
sounds good. Have you tried doing it?
No, I just saw the video yesterday. I'm going to do that this weekend, but it looked so good. I just can't wait.
The problem is that's the before, or that's like the best option, right? You ever seen this on social media?
Yeah.
Where someone says nailed it, and yours is going to turn out like an omelet.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like sometimes I make an omelet and I go to flip it, and roll it up, and it just falls apart, and all of a sudden you have scrambled eggs with onions and sausage and peppers and ham, and cheese. But it tastes the same. So I just can't wait to try this.
Give it a try.
There's a new pizza that's becoming pretty popular in my area, and Paul, I know you're going to love this. It's cauliflower crust pizza.
That's disgusting. Vile weed. Cauliflower is a vile weed.
Come on.
Maybe my stomach can handle that.
It's healthy. You're not getting all the carbs. So.
It's like turkey bacon. It shouldn't exist. It's just awful. At some point, people got to say no. Stop breaking.
I knew you were gonna love that.
It's just awful.
Well, you know what? You know how you say no? You vote with your money, Paul. Don't buy it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, thanks again, Chris, for joining us. We'll catch you
Thanks,
later.
Anytime. I appreciate the opportunity, guys. Talk soon.